Calvin Harris on Revolution Radio with Blame, and we are doing the latest in our series of Ask the Council Leaders today, and great to be joined in the studio by the Deputy Leader of West Northamptonshire Council, who is Adam Brown. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Chris.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent. The sun has come out in Northampton. It's looking like it's going to be a lovely day, and people might know you because you have a number of different roles on the council. You're a man with many hats. Tell me about the different things that your sort of jobs and your responsibilities on the council.
So I oversee what the council at least calls housing, culture and leisure. On the housing front, that means I have strategic oversight of our social housing programme through Northamptonshire Partnership Homes. On the culture front, that's libraries and museums, and also some more grassroots cultural activities such as I'll try and assist the people who are organising Heritage Open Days and other cultural events. They come to us asking for a bit of logistical support, and I do my best to get the ducks in a row at council level. And then on the leisure front, we obviously have our leisure centres across the district, but we also lend some support to grassroots clubs in all sports across the district, try and put them in touch with key funding organisations if they're not already in contact with them in their specific sports, and we also have our own strategies around sport and leisure. We work through End Sport or Northamptonshire Sport, who really try and drive participation in grassroots sport.
Amazing. So you've got quite a busy job. I bet your desk is probably like mine, like massive piles of stuff, and the in trays always just getting fuller and fuller. So there's so much that goes on that sort of cultural side of Northampton, and obviously with housing, that is a massive thing as well at the moment. It's
huge, and I'm from a generation of people who have found it more difficult than ever to buy their first home or to deal with the general costs of housing. So for me, it's a really personal issue. I recognise the massive importance, and for anyone to have a stable home, somewhere where they know that they can go back to week after week, year after year, that's the foundation of their life. And so it has so many knock-on effects if that foundation isn't in place in terms of their job prospects, being able to start a family, all that sort of thing. Housing is absolutely critical.
And I think the problem at the moment with housing for a lot of people is there's this kind of two problems. Everybody's in rental accommodation because they can't afford to get mortgages, but then there's also a shortage of affordable housing. And is that something that do you have a lot of control over that? Is that something that the national government kind of have a lot more influence over, or is there much that you can do on a local basis?
So we are, to a large degree, we are at the mercy of market forces and the national planning regime, but we try and do what we can locally. So we're trying to accelerate a programme of social house building through Northamptonshire Partnership Homes. We also work with housing associations. So in the south of the district, it's Grand Union Housing, and in the north of the district, around Daventry, it's Futures Housing. And through them, we're currently providing hundreds of additional extra affordable homes or social housing each and every year, and that just chips away at that need within the market. But even whilst doing that, we still have around 4,000 people on our housing waiting list, and that's simply because over the last decades we haven't had enough houses built in this country, and that's starting to seep through into that lack of affordability that you've recognised in housing in general, and that affects both the houses that people want to buy and the houses that people want to rent, so that there's no hiding from it, unfortunately.
It's a Tuesday morning, and it's great to be joined in the studio by Councillor Adam Brown from West Northamptonshire Council, who is still with me today, and he's answering your questions and talking about his areas of expertise, which are basically housing and culture and leisure and all of the stuff that's going on in West Northamptonshire. And I think on the leisure side, one of the big events that's coming up, which is going to be dominating the conversation for the next few weeks, is getting ready for the coronation of King Charles III on the 7th of May. And there's lots of stuff going on in our area for that you're sort of overseeing in your role.
Yes, indeed. So the main focus of the coronation weekend here in Northampton is a big party at Cllr Abbey on the Sunday, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to team up with the Royal and Domegate, who are doing the ticketing for that event. It's free tickets. You need to book in advance, but the tickets are absolutely free, and we're encouraging everyone to go along if they can. On the Saturday, we're working alongside Northampton Town Council to hold a street party here in Northampton Town Centre, and that promises to be a really exciting event. The focus on that is going to be the diverse communities of Northampton with the fantastic contribution of the Commonwealth nations firmly in mind. And I know that that's something that the King and certainly his mum, the Queen, held very, very close to her heart. So we want to focus on that on the Saturday. But overall, I think it's going to be a really exciting weekend. There's lots of events going on in villages around the district as well. So in the area that I represent, Bugbrook and the surrounding villages, we've got several places holding their own street parties and local community events, and that's great to see. It brings people together and gives people something to look forward to and something to enjoy. And
I think obviously a lot of people are going to want to hold street parties and get road closures in place for their streets and things. Is the council making it a little bit easier to get through all the paperwork?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a dedicated team in place to facilitate those temporary road closures. So we've worked with dozens and dozens of local parishes already to facilitate those road closures. We've had a good practice during the Jubilee last year, so we've got that experience under our belts, and look forward to seeing similar events happen again.
Lots of bunting, lots of long tablecloths, and just lots of people enjoying themselves in the streets. It's going to be lovely. The thing at the Cllr Abbey, you said that it's a ticketed event, but there's free tickets. Is there a limited number of those tickets? Do people need to get those quickly?
Yeah, so if the Jubilee is anything to go by, where we held a similar event, then the tickets will go very, very quickly. There is a limited capacity at the Abbey, just for the sake of safety and comfort. We don't want people too crammed in. So I'd encourage everybody to go and get their tickets ASAP so that they don't miss out.
Are you going to limit them to people with a local postcode, or can anybody just get
No,
tickets?
it's first come, first served, but we recognise that across the country there will be dozens, or if not hundreds, of similar events happening. So we expect it to be almost exclusively local people who want to come along and attend that celebration at Cllr Abbey. But that's the approach we've taken, and we hope to see a really good turnout.
Should be good. And the street party that you mentioned in the town centre, is that free to anybody? Do you need tickets for that?
So no, that's a case of just turning up. There'll be street food, there'll be bands and music and events happening on the day, and that'll be just a great party, a great celebration of our different diverse communities within Northampton and the surrounding area. So we're really looking forward to that as well. So two very different events across the 2 days of the coronation weekend, and I think there'll be something for everyone to enjoy.
Absolutely. If you want to find out more about either of those events, there's links and all the details on the news section of revolutionradio.com. And still with me in the studio is Cllr Adam Brown from West Northamptonshire Council. And we've had a really good chat this morning about lots of different things that the council is involved in. And obviously it is your council, so it's there to represent you and to do stuff for you. So do get involved with the coronation events and with everything else that's going on locally. And one of the big areas that's your responsibility is sport, and grassroots sport in particular. There's an awful lot of grassroots sports teams in the local area, and I guess part of your remit is to make sure that they're taking advantage of all the different opportunities that are open to them.
Absolutely. We do have the most amazing sports scene across Northamptonshire. As you'd expect with our local professional teams in Northampton, there's a really strong football, rugby and cricket scene, and lots of clubs in those areas are really starting to go from strength to strength with women's and girls teams. That's something that we're really keen to encourage them to do. But we also have more niche sports such as angling. There's a very strong angling community throughout West Northamptonshire. I was able to work with Northampton Sailing Club recently to negotiate with Anglian Water for an extension to their lease, which was under threat. And that provides people from all sorts of backgrounds with an ability to access water sports on Pittsford Reservoir. And then we have, through our leisure centres, we're able to facilitate badminton. We have tennis courts in Abington Park and lots of different facilities throughout the district. But part of my job is to be able to put those grassroots clubs in contact with funding bodies, national bodies, who they may not already have a working relationship with. And particularly through our local sports charity, Northamptonshire Sport, we're able to start facilitating those relationships, start those conversations so that those organisations can get a bit of seed funding, start expanding their operations and really reaching out to people that they've not been able to reach before. And through Northamptonshire Sport in particular, we are trying to really push participation from women and girls, from ethnic minority communities where historically there hasn't been the same level of opportunity and therefore participation. And so it's really about evening up the ability to participate, evening up the opportunities that people have to join in with sports, and sports that they may not necessarily have thought about before. Everyone's familiar with football, so, and people are naturally gifted footballers. I never was. That's fantastic, but we also want to give people an opportunity to get into running or cycling, and that was our thinking behind making some concessions around parking charges for park runs at our country parks, and also in trying to bring along national events such as the Tour of Britain, which will be happening here next year. That's the men's cycling tour. Sadly, the women's tour was cancelled by the national operator. That was due to come to Northampton. We were really excited about that. So that was a big blow. Yeah. Thankfully, we hadn't invested any money in it, so we didn't lose out financially. But I'm quite sad about the opportunity that especially women and girls will miss out on in seeing their sporting heroes cycle through West Northamptonshire, and that example that will be set to people. Did
they give you any reasons why they'd done that?
Yes, it was due to the loss of their major sponsor. So Skoda pulled out of sponsoring the event, and all cycling tours rely on sponsorship to be sustainable. It's not like other sports where they can sell tickets to events. These are open air, free to access events, so they rely almost solely on sponsorship revenue to keep going. And without that major automotive sponsor, it means that they don't have the support vehicles to keep their riders safe, and it just means that they don't have the income. And unfortunately, local government doesn't have the amount of money that they need to throw at a cycling tour. But we hope to see them back in the future when they get their sponsorship revenue back in place.
Yeah, well, hopefully they've done the groundwork, so they can just transfer that to a future year, and I guess the door's always open to them, so they'll consider us in the future. So do you? I guess you get to go along to a lot of these sports clubs, and do you get to have a go, do a bit of sailing, a bit of fishing?
Unfortunately, I haven't been able to join in with the sailing. I'm not much of a water person, but I really enjoy visiting the different clubs, hearing from the members, hearing from the people who are involved in running them, and they're often volunteers. They're very, very rarely paid professionals running these clubs. They do it out of love for their sport, love for their community. It gives people a sense of giving back to often clubs where they were once players or participants in the relevant sport, and it's quite humbling to see people have that level of dedication and level of generosity with their time and energy.
Yeah, and you never know when they're going to find the next Olympic gold medal winner or Greg Rutherford or somebody.
Absolutely, and in fact Northampton Sailing Club has provided Olympians in the past, and Olympians who have won medals, so they're a really successful example of more of a niche sport, but one that's been very, very successful in our local area.
And Cllr Adam Brown still with me from West Northamptonshire Council, and as well as being the deputy leader of the council, he's also got responsibility for housing, culture and leisure, and under that housing remit comes homelessness, which is such an important issue in Northampton, and it's something that affects everybody, because as you're walking through town, it's impossible not to be aware of the homeless people and kind of feel like you want to do something to help. And actually, you're the man that's got the power to do something, because the council has a responsibility to try and end rough sleeping. What sort of services and what support do you offer to people?
So the council has a legal responsibility to help anyone who's identified as rough sleeping. So we have what's called an outreach team who will go out and about every night of the week, checking on hotspots where we know that rough sleeping takes place and offering assistance to homeless people. And thereafter, so long as people are willing to accept the help of the council, and sadly some people aren't, then we'll place people into what's known as temporary accommodation. And once they're in temporary accommodation, we're able to provide support services. So if people do have problems with, say, alcohol dependency or substance abuse, we can provide support services to help with that. We can also provide education services to help people with household budgeting or other needs that they may just other areas of knowledge that may not have built up. For example, people who have come out of the armed services, and that's a known area of homelessness risk. People who have come out of the armed services haven't necessarily built up the life skills that people from other walks of life have, because within the armed services they have all of that done for them 99% of the time. So we have that educational side of things. We have the mental health support. We have other forms of support in place, and our aim is to help people build sustainable lives where they're able to become independent again. And prior to the pandemic, there were really large numbers of rough sleepers in Northampton, and over the course of the pandemic, because the government introduced a programme called Everyone In that placed a far greater housing duty on local councils, the numbers came right down. When I took over my post, my instruction to the council was that we should continue the ethos behind Everyone In and make sure that we're providing as much support to people as possible, and that included extending the severe weather emergency protocol that the council has, which means that we've been more generous in determining when we trigger that, when we get people off the streets if the weather's cold, or actually, as we saw last summer, in cases of extreme heat as well. So we're providing a more supportive environment for people who do find themselves in that really difficult situation. But without doubt, it's the most important, the most heavy responsibility that I have within my portfolio. And what I would add, though, is that as you're walking around town, not everyone who looks as though they're homeless is actually homeless, and the council has a very, very high awareness of the state of the homelessness, so the homeless community within the town. There's a work going on almost every hour of every day by council officials to work with rough sleepers and work with people who are at risk of homelessness to help them out and provide the support that they may need.
So the people that are sleeping rough, that genuinely are, they've all been approached, they've all been given that opportunity to be moved into housing, but not everybody takes up that offer.
Unless they're very, very recently rough sleeping, or they've managed to escape the attention of the council workers who are out looking for people who need help, then yes, the vast majority, nearly all of them, will have been spoken to, offered help, offered assistance by the council. But it is the case, and it was a surprise to me when I took on my role that it is the case that some people feel better sleeping on the streets. They don't necessarily want the council's help. And if you come from a stable background where you've always had a roof over your head, then it's a very difficult thing to comprehend. But those people are out there.
Some people do make that choice and that decision that's how they want to live.
Sadly so, yeah, despite all the risks around health, around shortened life expectancy and the dangers of living on the streets, people do still take that choice. But they are the minority, I'd stress that. They are a very small minority, but yeah, it is a choice that some people make.
So if you were to come across somebody who was homeless and you wanted to help them, how would you advise them to get in touch with the council to get that support?
So just call the council's main switchboard. The homelessness team operates 24/7, and by going through the options on the switchboard, you'll be able to speak to a member of the outreach team who will go out to the location and offer the relevant help. What we do advise is to not approach people, not to say if they're in a sleeping bag, not to shake them or anything like that, because it can take people by surprise. Sometimes people may be vulnerable in several different ways, and so it's important that we get a professional out there to offer the right help in the right way.
And obviously, if somebody looks like they might be in medical need, then you can obviously
absolutely, yeah. If someone's unresponsive, if someone looks as though they vomited or they're in a bad place, then yeah, call 999 and get a blue light service out to them.
And it's great to have spent the morning with Adam Brown in the studio from West Northamptonshire Council. Thanks very much for coming in today. And one of the things I wanted to touch on quickly before we finish was the Heritage Open Days, which come under your remit, under the sort of the leisure and culture side of things. And it's always a great weekend when those go on, because you get to go into all of the local kind of, not just museums and stately homes, but often you get to go into places where they're not always open to the public. And it's something that's been expanding a lot in Northampton and kind of beyond, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And just to be clear, the Heritage Open Days are run by a team of very dedicated volunteers. It's something that I assist with from the council, just in terms of the council being able to get its ducks in a row to open up, get some road closures in place. We provide a small amount of financial support, but the events themselves are put on by some very hard-working volunteers led by a gentleman called Graham Croucher, and it includes a display of vintage buses, and it opens up a whole range of heritage destinations across West Northamptonshire. And what started off as a solely Northampton event is now spreading out across the district, and taking in places like the Royal Ordnance Depot in Weedon, which has got a great history to it. It dates back to the Napoleonic Wars and was an old munitions store for the British Army, and giving people the chance to see attractions that they wouldn't necessarily think of or be able to access is something that we're really keen to do. But I think it's another demonstration of how the voluntary sector across West Northamptonshire adds so much to the local community. We as a council can take a small step back and act as a facilitator rather than having to deliver it ourselves, but the public still get to enjoy a fantastic event and at very little cost to themselves.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think I've done some amazing stuff on Heritage Open weekends. I've been up windmills. I've seen some breweries. It's like some of the breweries in Northampton have been open to the public for the first time. It's just been really fascinating. So the dates for it this year are the 9th to the 18th of September. And obviously it's a little bit later in the year, but I have plenty of time to look forward to that and start planning your weekends and put it in your diary, I guess.
Yeah, and between now and then, the list of activities and the list of places that people will be able to visit will just grow and grow, and it really is one of those events that's fun for all the family. It's a great place. It's a great event to take kids along to, and I think, going very technical, when you talk about your internal visitor economy, tourism within West Northamptonshire itself, it's just a great chance for people to get to learn more about the place where they live, the place where they've grown up, and get to appreciate some local history, which tells us so much about what the places we live in, how they've come to be what they are today.
I think that's so important, because actually a lot of the time it's the visitors to our area that get to do all the fun stuff, and we forget that there's so many different things to do here. If you haven't been to the new museum, it's looking amazing down the road from here. You've got obviously the theatres and galleries and things. Just so much that goes on culturally in the area. Yeah,
and I think when it's right under your nose, it's very easy to overlook it. We do have so much going on across West Northamptonshire, but particularly in Northampton. We have a thriving theatre scene, both at Royal and Derngate, the Deco Theatre, some amateur organisations as well. The museum now is up and running. NN Contemporary, a modern art gallery, is I believe about to reopen its doors after a long hiatus because of the renovation of its site. And we are becoming more and more of a cultural hub, and the council's undertaking other activity on that front. We have what's called a cultural compact being set up, and that's government speak for all sorts of different arts organisations coming together to promote each other, to draw new organisations into the fold, and just collectively pool ideas, work together, promote the full extent of the cultural scene within Northampton and Northamptonshire. And the long-term aspiration, we're not fully committed to it yet, but the long-term aspiration is that at some point in the future, Northampton may become a UK city of culture, because we are going from strength to strength, and we've got all sorts of hopes around being able to put on festivals during the Silverstone weekend, the Grand Prix weekend, and we are a county and a district where an awful lot happens, and it's good to be able to play a part in injecting some positivity into what happens in West Northamptonshire.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably a town of culture rather than a city of culture. Did they do those?
Yeah. We did miss out officially on city status, but I think the city of culture is open to towns as well.
Well, that's all right then. We're not going to miss out on that one. Well, thank you very much for joining me in the studio today, Adam, and very interesting to hear about all of the stuff that's going on in the area, and looking forward to the Jubilee stuff that's going to be taking place on the 7th of May. That's going to be an amazing weekend, one to tell the grandchildren about, and we'll have to start learning our quiche recipes for that as well, I think. Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thank you.